topic today Our topic today is who's responsible for your corporate cybersecurity? Think about that question. It's not that simple. And we're going to be talking a lot today with Bob of BSC Solutions about the human responsibilities, how we have conversations, checklists, etc. I'm really looking forward to today's session. Now, today's session is brought to us by our sponsors, Goodison Insurance, Toronto Pearson, CN, and Deloitte. And thank you to our sponsors for bringing the expert interviews to us, something that we started at the height of the pandemic. And with the light at the end of the tunnel as we head into the fall, it's great to have Bob Horniblow with us today from BSC Solutions. Now, let me share with you a little bit about BSC Solutions Group. It's been in business for half a century. Yes, 50 years. Fun fact, it was originally known as Brampton Electronics, a TV and VCR repair company. Remember VCRs? BSC has pivoted, has evolved over the last 50 years, and their main purpose has remained the same, though, and that's to help small and medium-sized organizations by now providing IT management and support, IT consulting and education, along with IT products and services in a manner that continues their values of trustworthiness, genuine concern and care, and well-being for their clients and customers. There are many topics to choose from when we talk about cybersecurity, and BSC will be launching a 30-point cybersecurity checklist sometime in the near future. You're going to get an advanced look at it today before the end of our session. Look in the chat for a link that can help you determine and ask questions to gauge your level of protection. You can actually complete it with Bob, and there may be some areas that you might want to explore a little bit further. So let me tell you a little bit more about Bob. We've known Bob for more than a year now. He's been actively engaged in the Brampton Board of Trade. He's a guy that believes in the credo, say what you do and do what you say. He's always had a great interest in technology, and originally studied and graduated with a degree in electronics prior to his favorite area, which is sales, marketing, business development. He's great with customers. He's a great storyteller, great explainer of technology, and together with the drive for technology and an excellent ability to communicate, Bob looks forward to interacting with prospects and providing solutions to help a company's overall IT experience. So welcome, Bob. We're really happy to have you here today.
Thank you, Todd. I'm glad to be here. I appreciate you inviting me.
Good stuff. Well, cybersecurity is a very big topic, and we're going to cover a few of some of the major things. There's so much distraction for many of our small and medium-sized companies these days, whether it's COVID-related health issues, whether it's supply chain challenges, whether it's recruitment and training of new talent. So cybersecurity, although very, very important, is competing against a number of other issues, and competing for mind space and time and talent with business people. Why don't we start off with how protected are we? I mean, I think a lot of our viewers know about firewalls and password protections, but you've suggested a concept that should be explored, and that's layered protection. Tell us a little bit more about layered protection and what it might mean, and how it might be a place to start when we're thinking about cybersecurity.
Really, Todd. Thanks. Yeah, you're right. We talk about the coronavirus pandemic, and really cybersecurity is its own pandemic on its own, really, out there in the computer world. But so many times when we're onboarding new clients and customers, the first thing they'll say to us is, we're good to go. We have a firewall. We have virus protection. Everything's working fine. So of course they don't know that it just takes that one bad phishing click, and then all of a sudden they're not fine. So we talk about layered protection, and it's not just having virus protection or a firewall alone. It really involves, who's patching your computers on a regular basis. Are you getting the right virus protection updates? Do you have a password manager that controls all your passwords? Because often people without a password manager are writing them down on a piece of paper, they're putting them in an Excel spreadsheet, they use their children's name, and then they say, okay, well, I'm going to use a different password, because you should never reuse the same password for multiple sites. I'll use my other child's name and I'll put a 1 at the end or something. So they're using very basic passwords, which Microsoft now recommends that changing your password is less important than actually having a complex password. And when I say a complex password, it's 21 characters, uppercase, lowercase, numbers, symbols, all that kind of good stuff. But the question with password management, and I'm rambling a little bit too much on passwords, but is it's very difficult for people to remember these. And if, I don't know about you, Todd, but I have over 80 different passwords I have to remember, and I could not do it without a password manager. And just so for everyone out there, there are some free password managers available through Microsoft Edge, and Google Chrome also have those free passwords. Now, there are ones you can purchase, and we have them available too. But if you want to just get the free ones, they're available out there, and I strongly recommend that.
Good to know.
Other layered protections, Todd, MFA or multi-factor authentication, wherever you can use this, we highly recommend turning that on. Of course, the firewall, backing up your data. You know, is your data protected? If you had a breach, are you able to go back an hour and then restore everything? 365 Microsoft, we all work in the cloud now, and we feel, oh, our data's in the cloud, so we're safe. Well, how do you know Microsoft's not going to lose your data in the cloud? So we actually have a third-party backup that backs up the cloud data. Okay, so again, layers and layers of protection. Don't assume that the one protection is going to protect you against everything. Phishing training, instant response plans, network monitoring, you know, having a guest Wi-Fi for people that come to your premises, putting a caution note on the bottom of your email. So if there's an email that you receive from one of your staff and you have a caution note on there, you know that was sent from outside of your domain. But if it came from your employee, that doesn't make sense. So it's about a red, that's a red flag. Putting screen lock protection on your computer. It may seem simple, but after 10 minutes, it shuts down. You have to re-log onto it. You don't really know when you go to the washroom, who's passing your computer and looking at critical information.
Yeah.
So I talk about all these different layers of protection. It's difficult for one organization to have everything, and we know that, because
Right.
the cost, you have a budgetary factor that's there too. So
Yeah,
anyway,
well, that's a really good overview of the various layers that are available, some of which I knew, some of them were new to me as well. So I'm glad that you're part of our interview here today, Bob, and I'm really interested in what your clients are experiencing and how you may have helped them. But let me start with how do you start a conversation with your internal IT person about layered protection, or how do you start a conversation with a third-party IT provider like yourself on how many layers do I need, and how many layers are enough to protect us without interfering with our productivity, to your point about long passwords and being able to remember them, and the other layers that you mentioned. Where's the starting point? How do you broach the subject of cybersecurity and balance security and convenience in your operations?
Well, good question, Todd. And I think the first thing is certainly communication. You need to communicate with your IT internal people. You also need to communicate with the outside company that you might be using. I think it's very important to include management in these discussions and really include everybody at the facility. But to answer your question, you need to ask them for a detailed description of what protection, cybersecurity protection, that they currently have in place. And then from that, what other technologies, or what am I missing? What are some layers? Using that word layer protection, any IT MSP is going to know exactly what you're talking about, and they should be on top of that if they're a good IT company or internal IT department. And they should be able to recommend to you that, well, you have this, but you don't have this. And I'll give you an example. Virus protection. We all have some sort of virus protection. There are 350,000 new viruses created every day. And most of the virus protection that's out there in the marketplace with organizations, I'm not saying everybody, and I couldn't tell you an exact percentage, but use older technology from the 90s. And that older virus protection relies on signature files in a database. So if you're scanning, you're going to a website and you click on a potential malicious link, your virus protection is going to scan and say, is this a virus? If it's not in the database, it's not going to detect it as a virus, and it's going to allow you to continue on. So with 350,000 viruses new every day, how can these databases keep up? They just can't. So the first thing I would say is, what type of antivirus do I have? Is it a next generation or XDR antivirus, which uses artificial intelligence now? So it's not just relying on signature databases, it looks at changes in activity. So is this unusual that's happening here right now? And it can detect this, and it can tell changes in activity. So it's a much more robust program. We use Sentinel-1, and just the other day, we had caught using Sentinel-1 a virus that I can pretty much tell you would not have been caught by the older types of viruses, just because it caught something based on activity changes, and it put a red flag up, and then somebody said, oh, what's this? And then they were able to abort or get away from getting that onto their system. So that is you really just have to reach out to your IT people, and you have to ask questions. Give them detail of what you have. For our clients, we have kind of 3 separate levels: stage 1, 2, and 3 for cybersecurity. We tell people we don't expect that you're going to be at 3 right at the top, but we work our way and we prioritize based on budgeting. There maybe the funds just aren't there to do that, but we work our way up to the top and try to get to that level 3. So I think you just really need to reach out and talk to your IT people and get a detail of what is actually going on at this point.
Great, Bob. That's good advice. I want to ask you about delegation of responsibility for corporate security. But I think what I want to ask you first is, can you give us some examples? What are some of the crafty, sneaky, new ways that companies are being breached, be it through phishing scams, whatever? Can you give us an example or two of what the risk is for companies, and then we'll talk a bit more about how we can protect ourselves against those specific risks.
Yeah, and first of all, the risk is really out there for anybody. It's not that these bad actors, we call them, are targeting just government agencies or large corporations anymore. They are targeting everybody, and they'll just probe and they look for loopholes and access points. So they don't necessarily know who they're probing. So don't think just because you're a small company that you're not going to get attacked. So an example for you would be the other day we had a customer who they had a vendor of themselves that had said, oh, you were breached. We received an email stating that you were changing your banking information. We received it from you, so we went ahead and changed the banking information, and we just sent you $30,000. Well, what happened was during further investigation is these bad actors, what they'll do is they look on social media, they look and everywhere they can to find out about companies. They go to their website and they're trying to find out who the financial people are. So they spoofed an email and sent it to the financial controller at this company. And in behind the email, the properties of the email, they'd actually changed the domain name and they added an I on the end of the domain. Okay, so by doing that, the person's got the email. It looks like it was somebody from our customer that was sending them an email to tell them to change this information. So they went, changed the information, they sent the money, and then our customer was asking them, where are the funds? We've not received it. Well, we sent it to you, and it wasn't till we investigated it we realized that they had actually been breached, not us. And so a simple thing I mentioned, caution note. If that email was sent, well, in this case, it wouldn't have applied, but if you had some of these layered protections like phishing training, for instance, this is obviously a phishing email. So training your staff on phishing training is so important these days, because I'll tell you, Todd, the one thing we can't control is human error, right? We can put virus protection in place, we can put all these layers, but we can't control if an employee clicks on a link they shouldn't. Now, there are some smarter programs out there which will search that link or the attachment, and it will tell you, we don't recommend you click on this link, we think it's malicious. But again, that comes all back to layered protection. How much do you want to spend in protecting yourself? Because you can go max or you can go halfway. I mean, and that's part of the issue is budgetary, and where do you stop? But yeah.
So Bob, one way of protecting against phishing, as you say, there are many different ways, but is to check. Don't click on the attachment, don't click on the link, but to do hover over the email and check for incorrect spelling or an entirely different email, and that way you know that it's a phishing scam. You also mentioned a cautionary note. Tell us what that is and how that might help protect.
Sure, certainly. So for you say the Brampton Board of Trade, for instance, you have a domain, that's the Brampton Board of Trade, that's your website, that's your domain. So any email sent within your own domain would not have a caution note. So if you received an email from myself, for instance, I'm outside of your domain, that email coming to you would now have a caution note, and it would say, we just want to caution you that this email originated from outside of your domain. We just want you to know that, because if in fact it was coming from somebody within your organization that was within your domain and you had that caution note, that would highly be suspected as a phishing email, because that shouldn't happen. So again, that's not going to protect you 100%, Todd, but it's another layer of that protection.
Very good.
Yeah.
Very good. So you mentioned phishing training, and this goes to my next question is, if you're the owner of the company, there is so much that you can do to protect the company, but your finance people, your sales people, your operations people, your product development people, customer service people, they all require and are all vulnerable to attacks, phishing schemes, etc. When you're setting up protections, what can you delegate? Any rules of thumb in terms of what a business owner can, or what management can delegate, and some ways to delegate, and the authority and responsibility that should go with that delegation? Talk to us a little bit about responsibility throughout the organization and how it's best to have those conversations.
Yeah, certainly. Now I guess what you're asking is, we always encourage management and really all staff at any employer to be involved in the cybersecurity for that company. And when we talk about phishing training, our phishing training encumbers 2 training sessions per year, but each quarter we send out a fictitious phishing email to our clients, and we try to spoof them to click on the email. If they click on it, they get phished, and a little message will come up, say, don't worry, everything's okay, you've just been phished by BSC. Management then gets that report, and they can look at who's completed the training, who's been phished. And so then what happens is if somebody's phished, we're not there to slap their hand. This is an education process. This is how we learn. So they'll be prompted to take further training if they've been phished. So management gets these reports. So when we talk about having management and all staff involved, the management may have to then delegate down and say, hey, I noticed that you clicked on this email. Here's why you shouldn't have clicked on it. And really the general rule with phishing emails is if in doubt, ask somebody. Go to your IT department. Just it's better to not click and just ask questions first before you go ahead and click on a link.
Good advice.
So yeah, I mean, again, just wanting to include all management and all employees in cyber cybersecurity these
Well,
days.
that's wonderful that you have a testing tool that attempts to phish and identifies vulnerability. Again, it's not to center out the individual; it's as a learning opportunity. And new staff come on, and sometimes staff forget. So that's a great service that you have there. And to your point, it is meant to be constructive. No one likes to be slapped by a fish.
Oh,
Right?
no, for sure. But just to reiterate on that, Todd, I think management and really have to realize that, if something happens within their organization, one of their employees clicks on a phishing link, the potential consequences of that. You got business disruption, data corruption, data loss, data theft, lost productivity, lost profits, right? We all think of profits, but cybersecurity really should be right up there with profits, because without the proper cybersecurity, I think the profits could go by the wayside if you're not operating as a company. Damaged reputation. Are people, if you get breached, are they gonna, think of Amazon if they get breached? Oh, I may not want to buy from them right now. You're going to lose that reputation that you have. So if you can protect yourself ahead of time and be proactive, and as opposed to reactive, that's going to make the process so much better for sure.
Good advice. Now, you're right. There are a lot of negative consequences to having been hacked. Talk to us a little bit about cleanup. Okay, what happens if we're hacked? If there's a data breach, what are some of the standard steps to take? I know that there are many different examples, but maybe you could give us an overview. And then perhaps you could talk about something that I think folks know about, but maybe you can enlighten us a little bit more: cyber liability insurance. So what do we do if we're hacked? How do we communicate to staff, customers, and tell us a little bit more about cyber liability insurance, Bob?
Certainly. So cyber liability insurance is insurance to provide disaster recovery funds in the event of a breach. And I can tell you that if you're breached and you do not have some sort of cyber liability insurance in place, it could cost hundreds of thousands of dollars. I'm not talking about paying off the ransomware people. I'm talking about just configuring your infrastructure and trying to get your data back. I mean, if your data is encrypted, there really isn't a lot people can do with encrypted data. So again, that's why it's so important to be proactive and protect yourself. You can't protect yourself 100%, but we can bring you pretty close to that, as opposed to being at the 50% protection. So cyber liability insurance, is very important. And one thing I might add on cyber liability insurance is often, if you can get cyber liability insurance and you just make a phone call to your agent and say, I'd like to get cyber liability insurance, and they say, sure, no problem, it's $100 a month, I'll send you the policy. I don't think that cyber liability insurance is going to be very good. So the reason I say that is this, cyber liability insurance should come with a very lengthy questionnaire, similar to the one that we're going to give you a link to today, which asks, are you using MFA? Do you have a password manager? Do you have a firewall? They want to know all the things you have in place, because if something happens and you say you had it in place and it wasn't in place, what do you think is going to happen? They're going to say, sorry, you said you had this and you don't have this, so we can't give you any liability insurance. Mm-hmm. So, beware of the quick insurance. It's probably not worth much, and that you should have a lengthy questionnaire that goes along with it. And we help our customers with that questionnaire. A lot of times they don't know how to answer it, but we can certainly answer that for them. Yeah, so I'm not sure if that answered your total question there, but
does. It really helps out, Bob. And just off the top of your head, a breach occurs. I'm locked out of my data. What's my first 3 steps that I should take in case of a breach?
Yeah, I mean, there's quite a long list actually, but I would say that you want to disconnect your network immediately. Usually the damage is already done at that point, but I mean, a lot of times these bad actors aren't just breaching you that day. Once they breach you, they've been on your network for months, and they are on there. They're looking for the financial people. They're looking for the controllers, the money handlers. So they're looking at trying to get in between somewhere where they can obtain some money. So they'll stay there for months before they actually
They'll lurk. They'll lurk. Yeah.
Voice of ransomware. And usually the ransomware is after they've already got what they wanted. Then they'll deploy that. So, I mean, I guess first thing I would say is, turn off your network, shut everything down that's access to the internet, contact your IT, your internal IT people, or your IT company, of course, your insurance company, if you have that insurance. And at that point, I mean, most people in management aren't techie, so they're not necessarily going to know what to do, but that's why we really promote having a cyber liability incident response plan. So this plan would give you a pinpoint. Okay, this has happened, guys, today. Let's just go to the plan. It's going to tell us what to do, as opposed to, oh, what do I do now? Because often minutes, trying to find a lost child, the first 5 minutes are very important, right? So this is the same scenario. That's why you should have an incident response plan. So it's very clear what steps you need to take. But disconnecting yourself from the network would be certainly step one. But at that point, it gets pretty technical.
Sure.
But I think that would be the best answer I can give you for that one, Todd.
Good advice. Good advice. Well, Bob, you've provided lots of practical advice for us in this call. I've got one last question for you. A lot of businesses are experiencing changes, disruptions, uncertainties in their supply chain. And that's just as a result of coming through COVID and some environmental stoppages, strikes, blockades, etc., that have happened over the last year. And that might make the supply chain ripe for cyber vulnerabilities as well. I'm wondering if you could just tell us how important it is to address cybersecurity with your vendors, with your customers, in your supply chain, and any advice that you might have there.
Sure. So just to give you an example, if you have say you've got your internal network and you have once a year your accountant decides to come into your organization and he wants to plug a physical cable into your network. Well, now he's plugging a computer that's not monitored, that we don't know if is patched. Does it have the most recent virus protection on there? That could potentially be opening your network up to a ransomware or some kind of payload that he may have on the computer. And so when coming to supply chain, it's very much the same thing. If you deal with a company that maybe they access your website, so they have login credentials, maybe they have access to a remote computer at your office or a server where they go to a portal and they're accessing information, which is all fine. You've allowed them to do that. But if they're accessing it and they don't have the same level of cybersecurity layered protection in place as you do, now you've opened up another vulnerability. We even look at cell phones. Like, I could go on and on. I know we only have 30 minutes, but cell phones, a lot of people have corporately owned and personal cell phones at their organizations. And but they allow them to clearly just log on to the network. How old are these cell phones? Are they patched? So, it's really, I guess in summary, it's coming down to management and staff, basically, really getting more involved in cybersecurity and talking to your department, finding out what you have, what you don't have, and what's the next steps, and developing an incident response plan. Because really, it's not so much if you're going to get attacked, it's really now when. We all, the breach will happen. It's just a matter of when now, Todd. And I'm not trying to paint all that doom and gloom out there, but I just want everybody to know that we all have to take cybersecurity more seriously.
Well, Bob, you've done a really good job to give us points to consider: layered protection, having conversations, what to do after a breach, an incident response plan. You gave us some examples of some of the craftiness of potential hackers, and giving us things to think about, not only within our organization but within our supply chain as well. So I thank you very, very much for this informative conversation. Our guests, our viewers today, can view this. If you haven't viewed it live, you can tell you, or if you are, you can tell your friends about it. We do record it. It will be on bramptonbot.com for future viewing as well. Our guest today has been Bob Horniblow. He's with BSC Solutions Group. And Bob, thank you very much for this practical conversation today. If is there anything else that you want to mention, Bob?
Sure. Thanks, Todd, for having me. A pleasure to be here. I just wanted to mention that I believe in the chat there'll be a link to our website, which it's actually a 35-point checkup. And this will be a link that I will actually go through the 35-point checkup with you online, because sometimes there might be a question on there that maybe somebody doesn't quite understand what it is. I can explain it. Then they say, oh, yes, we have that, or we don't have that. And then there'll be a report following this 35-point checkup that we would provide the customer free of charge. They could, at that point, choose to use some of our services, or a lot of this they could take right back to their own IT department or IT company and say, and this would be a good starting point to start asking those questions about what do we have in place as far as cybersecurity. So this will give them some ideas and questions that they can ask their IT department.
Well, that is tremendously valuable, Bob. Thank you for that practical checklist. Yes, it's in our chat here. You can find it at bscsg.com. That's BSC Solutions Group, bscsg.com/30-point cybersecurity checklist landing page. It's in your chat room for those important questions, checklists. And Bob, thank you for your time today, and thank you for taking viewers through that if they avail themselves to this great checklist. If you are interested in learning more about cybersecurity, I want to bring to your attention September 21st. September 21st, the Brampton Board of Trade is hosting a virtual summit. It's on behalf of Canada's Innovation Corridor Business Council. That's the 18 boards of trade and chambers of commerce across the Canada's Innovation Corridor, all the way from Durham region to Waterloo region, including Hamilton. On the 21st, this virtual summit, we have a specific panel called Preparing Your People for an Increasingly Scary Cyber World. And our guests for panelists for that session are Jeremy McBean from IT Weapons, Conoco Minolta here in Brampton, Dr. Jeremy McBean. Also Dr. Ian McKillop, who is the Associate Professor for Cryptography, Security, and Privacy at the University of Waterloo, and our very own Charles Finlay, Executive Director of Brampton's Rogers Cyber Secure Catalyst. We'll be having a very good discussion about what you can do to better protect yourself from hacks, customer data interruptions, etc. What's the latest trickery, and how do we turn our weakest links into our greatest strengths? If you enjoyed the session, and that's at corridorsummit.ca. You can get, as a Brampton Board of Trade member, using the BBOT 99 promo code, you can get a discounted rate for attendance at that. It's a great summit that has some other keynote speakers, including Rolla Dogger, the Global Channel Chief for Dell Technologies, and Terry Stewart as well, who is the Chief Information Officer for Deloitte. If you enjoyed today's expert session, next week we're holding it on September 16th. You may have heard we've got a federal election happening in Canada on the 20th. And we've done a poll of Brampton businesses and Brampton citizens with Leger, the polling firm, and I'll be interviewing a representative from Leger on what those results were. What are the voices of Brampton businesses and citizens saying in advance of the 2021 federal election, which is September 30th. Lastly, I know you all know that Brampton is one of Canada's most dynamic workforces, one of the youngest workforces in Canada. We like to shine a light on those that are under 40 that are making a difference in your companies, in your communities. And this is a reminder that our top 40 under 40 is coming up later this year, and the deadline for nominations is September 30th. So it's easy to nominate a young man or a young woman that's making a difference in our community, in your organization. You can nominate online. Please head to our website at bramptonbot.com for more information on downloading that nomination. We've got it here in the chat here for you as well. And please do that before September 30th. So again, thanks to our staff here at the Brampton Board of Trade for another exciting expert interview. Bob, it was a pleasure talking to you. It's always a pleasure speaking with you. You can see Bob again by giving him a call at BSC Solutions Group or visiting him on his website. You'll probably see Bob at some of our upcoming networks as well. We've got networks happening in September and October in business development and in innovation and goods movement. I think our Connect work is coming up on September 8th as well, where Brampton businesswomen meet. You'll see Bob again out and about in the city. It's good to see you here today, Bob. And we thank you all for viewing and look forward to seeing you at our next Brampton Board of Trade event. Thanks, everybody.
Great. Thanks again, Todd.
Take care. Bye now.
Bye.